August 22nd, and the center of Moscow has been blown up.
In the center! In the center!
So just now there was a drone explosion. Everyone woke up.
We don't even know yet which tower got hit.
The new Flamingo missiles are striking Moscow.
Sochi got blown up again.
The heart of the capital residential complex. That's in Moscow City.
Donald Trump is sending kamikaze JASSM drones to strike Moscow.
I caught that on camera.
The third phase of Special Operation Web has begun.
Are you filming?
Yes!
Unbelievable.
Mom?
Moscow airports are closed. Sabotage and gunfire near the Kremlin. Muscovites are in panic. Evacuation has begun.
What's going on?
Guys, there are families and children there after work. The SBU is preparing new sabotage operations on Russian territory. Moscow, St. Petersburg, get ready to evacuate. We'll discuss all this with Ruslan Kutayev right now.
So, there was a significant missile strike.
A new phase of the war? In the past 48 hours, Ukraine has carried out a series of devastating strikes on the MAO gas pipelines. These are explosions 3,000 kilometers from Moscow, strikes on the Pacific Fleet and the Black Sea Fleet. Russia is losing. Depots and airfields in Rostov and Borisogledsk are being destroyed. Oil refineries are burning. But most importantly, thousands of drones are flying toward Moscow and St. Petersburg, and Donald Trump has decided to provide Ukraine with JASSM missiles, American missiles that will strike Moscow and St. Petersburg with a range of 1,000 kilometers. And that's incredibly powerful. Moreover, he made a statement that he is ready to impose hellish sanctions against Russia. Let's discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Mukhomedovich, welcome.
Dasha, hello to you. Greet our esteemed viewers.
Ruslan Mukhomedovich, a new phase of the war. 1,000 drones are flying toward Moscow and St. Petersburg. Moreover, the American JASSM missiles are ready to be deployed. What do you think?
I want to remind you of Zaluzhny's remarkable article from back in the day where he said, I warn both America and European countries, in modern life, in modern warfare, it is not people who win, but technology that prevails. And Ukraine did it because Zaluzhny, who was still the commander at the time, laid that groundwork. The Ukrainian authorities understood this, and I think Europe did too, without a doubt. And when it comes to these drone technologies, Ukraine has made real progress. I always say this with pleasure. The ingenuity of Ukrainian scientists is so great that now they can easily fly beyond the Urals, they strike, they cause damage, and they do this on a massive scale. That's right, as you said, they can reach St. Petersburg, Moscow, and any military targets. Unlike the Russians, Ukrainians strike specifically at strategic targets, military targets, or at worst, targets of a semi-military nature. And in this regard, Ukraine has now made significant progress. Putin, in his behavior, such brazen behavior, not only ignores Trump, but is actually quite mocking towards him, especially as Putin's propagandists have started to act. Finally, it got through to Trump. At last, someone in his inner circle managed to tell him, to show him that in Moscow they're mocking him, and he started to make some moves. God willing, he keeps it up. And now America, first of all, what they stopped and then resumed, now, as you said, they're planning to supply long-range missiles. And soon, it won't just be drones, but missiles that will be able to reach both Moscow and St. Petersburg, as well as targets that until now have been out of Ukraine's reach. That's good news. That's very good news because with this, Ukraine is making a fresh, new emphasis that the war will reach a turning point. And we have other news as well. Trump himself said Europe will finance, Europe will pay, and America will sell weapons to Ukraine for Ukraine. And this crucial news, which is consistently and reliably reaching us here, is also undoubtedly reaching Russia. They are already beginning to truly throw a significant fit over there, expressing their considerable displeasure. And well, let them do it. And Ukraine will win. It definitely will win. And Merz, he's awesome. I just can't get enough of him. Every day, he makes such pleasant statements. Defense Minister Merz says such nice things. And all of this makes us happy. Why? because Ukraine will win, because we will overcome the enemy, because we are winning. And this is becoming so obvious now. For me, it was always obvious that never, under any circumstances, would Russia defeat Ukraine. These are such good news, Dasha, and we are happy, and we understand that everything is turning out much better than they thought in Russia.
Ruslan Mukhomedovich, what do the 1,000-kilometer range JASSM missiles mean first and foremost for Putin? And how will Russian war correspondents and propagandists react to this?
You know, if you think in Russian terms, they'll say they'll be firing there, striking the Kremlin, the State Duma. No. At most, only if Ukraine is forced to, they might go for it. They will target military factories. I want to remind our viewers, Moscow, the Moscow region, both near and far, Tula, Vladimir region, all of these are packed with military enterprises producing weapons, ammunition, and military technologies. And that's why, first and foremost, this is a signal. If a drone strikes, but several drones, dozens of drones, can halt an enterprise, can destroy a facility. But a missile is a nightmare for Russia and for Russians, because in reality, with just one or two strikes, these enterprises will cease to exist. And that's why this is very good news. This is good news, along with the fact that I want to remind you, Ukrainians have not stopped. They are improving the Neptune, which has the same 1,000-kilometer strike range. If anyone thinks that this production has been abandoned, they are mistaken. In fact, it seems to me that soon Ukraine won't need either American or European missiles because their scientists are improving and working on their own. And if Ukraine's military-industrial complex starts producing them on an industrial scale in large volumes, then I can confidently say that it won't take much time. 3 years, 5 years, which unfortunately is a long time in wartime conditions. But Ukraine will soon be able to bring its own military-industrial equipment and development complex to such a level that they will confidently have the capability to even sell to other countries. Good news, Dasha, good news and good expectations.
Samonik, what does Trump's statement about possibly imposing sanctions against Russia mean? Will these be hellish 500% tariffs, or will they be more lenient for the Kremlin and those countries that buy energy resources from the Russian Federation, the aggressor country?
I'll be honest with you, we've already gotten used to Trump's behavior. This is blackmail against Putin. He's blackmailing Putin. They talked about something, they made some kind of deal. As Trump says, they had some sort of arrangement. But apparently, Trump didn't fulfill his part of that deal. We suspect that his part was the capitulation of Ukraine. Neither Putin nor Trump together will ever be able to achieve that. And that's why now we can guess what signals Putin and Trump are sending to each other. And these crucial 50 days are precisely what Trump essentially gave to Putin. Either you meet me completely halfway and we can finally start implementing our comprehensive deal, or I will unequivocally continue to arm and quite substantially finance Ukraine, ensuring its continued resistance and defense. It's equivalent. And now Trump will wait to see what initiatives come from Putin. If something comes from Putin that Trump is expecting, Trump could, without batting an eye, change his position with a statement. I think Ukraine understands and realizes this well. In Europe, they understand and realize this too. That's why European countries have set their sails to full strength. Without looking back at America, they have started putting their industrial enterprises into operation, so to speak. I've said this before. Germany's automotive sector, Volkswagen, for example, has announced that they are stopping civilian production and switching to the military industrial development of Germany. So we'll listen to Trump. We like the way he talks, but to fully trust Trump and rely solely on him would be deceiving ourselves. That's why we keep moving forward. As long as Trump keeps providing all this, great, that's good. Even if he stops providing it, when he starts to hold back, I hope Europe will step up and Ukraine will step up. I want, and it's important for viewers to hear this. Lately, dear viewers, Ukraine doesn't just want shells and ammunition. They want to develop their industry, their military industry. They want to build up their own military industrial complex. And that's a state-level approach. and they will produce their own shells, their own missiles, their own drones, and their own aircraft. And here, I'm not overreaching. It won't be long before Ukraine will have and produce its own aircraft. And they already have the foundation for it. We know what Ukraine is capable of. Mykolaiv, shipbuilding. Just imagine what kind of ships will come out of the shipyards in Mykolaiv and Odessa. And that's what we're waiting for. The Caucasus is waiting for such an industrially strong Ukraine because we are allies, because we are brotherly peoples and will stand together against our enemies. So Dasha, these are not just idle hopes of someone lazing around on the stove. These are real actions that are taking place. We are pushing for this to move faster, to go better, and we are happy when this is being done. And all of this is really happening. Dear audience, please like this video. Write a few kind words in support of Ukraine in the comments. We work for an audience all over the world. This is very important. Another very important point is that Merz has not yet handed over the Taurus missiles to us. Today, the German Minister of Defense said that there will be no Taurus missiles. But, as far as we understand, at the end of this month, that is very soon, a batch of missiles will arrive, long-range Ukrainian missiles, and the production of these missiles was financed by Germany. So essentially, Germany financed a batch of Ukrainian long-range missile production. What do you think? Let's say, use our imagination a little here. What if the Germans are supplying Taurus missiles and for the casing they provide the money so that the Taurus's internal components are rebranded with a Ukrainian name like Bodan or something else? So I don't rule anything out here. And that's why we see Germany's attitude, the attitude of Merz, Pistorius. In general, there is a lot of awareness in Europe right now. I see that when meeting with German politicians 2 years ago and now, they are different people. They suddenly started to understand, to realize that the front line is not just Ukraine's front line in Ukraine, but the front line of Europe, of Germany and France in Ukraine. And now in their understanding, they are even ahead of France, and I fear even ahead of Britain. Britain, we remember in 2022, in 2021, even before Russia's invasion, the enormous efforts made by both Johnson and Britain when they essentially declared that even if the whole world refused to help, Britain, Poland, and Ukraine, united in alliance, would do everything possible to resist Russia's incursion into Ukraine. And that's why even such an ally as Britain, it seems to me, is now being overshadowed by Germany with its initiatives and its understanding that victory is necessary. By the way, Merz is already speaking openly about this. Russia must be defeated. Russia must be defeated and Ukraine will do it. And so overall, we expect that every day we will be receiving good news. Good news from the GDP, or more precisely, from Germany's military-industrial complex. Ruslan Kamitic, regarding the current situation where Putin is engaging in missile and drone terror, drones are flying, ballistic missiles, MiGs are taking off. In other words, Putin is constantly attacking Ukraine. Moreover, they once convinced Putin that for Russia, remember when Margarita Simonian said, "We'll just blink or wink and Kyiv will be ours." And so Putin and his emissaries convinced the American side that there was nothing to even think about or discuss here. Russia is defeating Ukraine. And so in order for these claims they've made, for these things to be confirmed, these initiatives are happening so that people like Kellogg can say, yes, Russia has carried out both missile and drone attacks, and all of this continues. By doing this, Putin thinks he's demonstrating so that reports to Trump will say that Russia is now carrying out very serious attacks and conducting these military operations against both Kyiv and all of Ukraine. I think there's also a bit of a secret to Putin's behavior here. Nothing will help, neither persuasion nor Trump ignoring it. Trump himself is now, as we know, in trouble for another reason because of Epstein. But right now, MAGA is the very core of Trump's support. They have now turned against him. Trump is now losing ground very seriously. And if he now loses his connection with Ukraine, 70% of Republicans, American voters, are in favor of funding and supporting Ukraine. And Trump is not free right now, and maybe if he were free, he would act completely differently, because he is not particularly known for his love of Ukraine or Ukrainians. And that's why we need to understand that it is the voters, the mood of Americans, including a large part of, let's say, the Reagan wing of the Republicans who support Ukraine. And that's why we have the situation we have now. All of this combined puts pressure on Trump. It all weighs on him, and he is being given signals that Trump should act actively in support of Ukraine. And that's why none of Putin's initiatives, none of his maneuvers, no matter how many strikes he carries out against peaceful Ukrainians, defenseless children, women, by the way, their favorite pastime is killing defenseless people. We know from the two wars in Chechnya that they kill the most defenseless. They fire at markets, they fire at hospitals, at mosques, at maternity wards. They think that by doing this, they will cause panic, back then among Chechens, now among Ukrainians, and that the Ukrainian population will take to the streets, stage some kind of Maidan, and demand that Zelensky stop the war. But there's one thing they don't understand. On the contrary, contempt and hatred toward Putin and the Russians only grow because of their actions. Now, Ukrainians will fight to the last person without hesitation, but they will never accept this invasion by Putin and his ideology of Russian Nazism.
Dear audience, Ruslan Kamdievich Kutai and I work for you every week. Traditionally, we work for an audience all over the world, so your support is invaluable. Every like, every comment is priceless. Let us know in the comments what you think about our partnership. What do you think about Trump being ready to provide Ukraine with long-range JASSM missiles so that it can attack military targets in Moscow and St. Petersburg? And now I can't help but ask you, what if Europe lowers the price of oil to $45 per barrel? And if Trump, by September, for sure, yes, he imposes sanctions, or rather the Senate imposes secondary sanctions against Russia? Could this potentially shake the very foundations of the Kremlin regime, Ruslan Kamdievich, or will none of this truly matter to Vladimir Putin from an economic or military standpoint? Because for him, waging this protracted war against Ukraine fundamentally means political survival?
These are indeed very serious sanctions if the Senate is truly ready. Before, we talked about 80 people, but now there are 85 confirmed supporters. And let me remind you, there are only 100 people in the Senate. So this is a very significant number. The Senate is ready to support Ukraine. The Senate is indeed imposing these very aggressive sanctions. They're called aggressive because they will target buyers of Russian oil, specifically the buyers. And who are the buyers? They are China and India. It won't be profitable for them because with these sanctions, it will be better for them to buy Iranian, Saudi, or any other oil since their losses will be significant. And that's a very serious blow. It's an extremely serious blow to Russia, to Russia's economy. Dasha, you and I have talked about this many times and cited the numbers. The economy, it's already hit rock bottom in Russia. Right now, all it takes is to give that little house a shake and it will just fall apart. And frankly speaking, everyone will be buried in the ruins of that house. That's why the situation in Russia is extremely difficult and complicated. If these sanctions start working, it will finish off Russia's economy and the front will collapse. And that raises some very interesting questions. I've been talking about this since the very beginning of the war. 1.5 to 2 million ruthless killers who were recruited from absolutely anywhere. Even if they initially forced normal, everyday people to the front lines, they inevitably turned them into hardened, brutal killers. People who despise Putin, who despise the authorities, because after surviving those meat grinder assaults, all they have left is contempt and hatred for the Russian government. And everywhere you look, wherever we turn, there are always significant and persistent problems for Russia, for the Russian authorities, for the prevailing Russian ideology. And that's truly good news for the progressive world and for Ukraine.
Donald Trump made a statement that the US and NATO have reached an agreement to supply weapons to Ukraine at the expense of the Europeans. As I understand it, NATO will be paying the United States of America for the supply of weapons. Another statement from the US president. The US will impose secondary sanctions on Russia and its partners if there is no deal for a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. The United States will impose import tariffs of 100% on Russia and its trading partners if Moscow and Washington do not reach an agreement on Ukraine, 100%. The coordination of American weapons supplies to Ukraine will be handled by NATO and the US permanent representative to the alliance, Whitaker. Trump stated that he is not satisfied with Russia's position on Ukraine. Billions of dollars worth of military equipment will be quickly paid for by NATO and distributed on the battlefield in Ukraine. Ruslan Khamdievich, we have received the figure 100%. The United States will impose import tariffs of 100% on Russia and its trading partners. This sounds very realistic and actually very strong because we understand perfectly well that 500 is a lot. It wasn't very realistic, but 100% is also a lot, yet it's realistic. What do you think? What will China and India do at that point? I'm very interested to see.
Dasha, 500% really is just pure fantasy. 100% is enough. If you want to know, 50% is already a lot. 100 is devastating. 100 is devastating. And so now look at how much Trump's rhetoric has softened. Before this point in time, he wouldn't even allow any talk whatsoever of NATO supplying military-grade weapons to Ukraine. He explicitly stated that European countries could certainly do it if they genuinely wish to do so. He deliberately raised this crucial issue to make absolutely sure that NATO, as an organization, wouldn't supply any weapons at all, primarily because the United States of America is a prominent and influential NATO member. Do you see now? The United States itself is now saying that through NATO we will supply weapons. What a softening, a shift in America's attitude, and above all, Donald Trump's attitude toward Ukraine. That's something you can really feel. And here you're absolutely right. If before it was all just 500% fantasy, now it's shifting into a practical realm of understanding. For people, for countries, for heads of state, and frankly, for politicians, political scientists, and experts. 100% is a good figure. It's a powerful number, and now it looks and sounds much more realistic.
Ruslan Khamdievich regarding Trump's statement. Another 17 Patriot systems are being prepared for shipment. 17. A large number of these systems will be on the battlefield. We've spent about $350 billion on the Russia-Ukraine war, and we wanted it to end. Ukraine will feel that it has become stronger. 17 Patriot systems. The introduction of secondary US tariffs in the absence of progress on Ukraine will not require congressional approval. So basically, we've met here to discuss the key statements made by Trump on Monday, 17 Patriot systems. What do you think?
That's very significant. In order to protect Ukraine, experts have said that at least another 7 to 9 Patriot systems are needed. If America were to provide this support, at least not for the frontline areas, but for the deeper regions, say Odessa, Kyiv, and other regions, they would be fully covered. 17 Patriot systems means that all of Ukraine will be protected. It also means that the F-16s already provided will be able to operate very effectively, inflicting serious damage. Why is that? Because when the skies are protected and there is no threat of attacks from the Russian side, even the Ukrainian Air Force, though it is small, will be able to operate effectively. And here, all the significant and undeniable advantages are becoming quite clearly and abundantly apparent, truly forming a strong and intricate chain of new and vital relations being carefully built and meticulously fostered between America, that is, President Trump, and the nation of Ukraine. And this cannot help but make us happy. And we sincerely and genuinely hope that these significant initiatives he has thoughtfully announced will not merely remain just proposals, but will actually be fully and effectively put into practice and implemented. At the same time, I also want to specifically address all the viewers out there. This is incredibly important because I am very often asked this particular question. What if Donald Trump unilaterally suspends these previously announced initiatives and subsequently doesn't follow through on them? Dear esteemed viewers, the political and military leadership of Ukraine is working so incredibly closely and collaboratively with various European countries, with their respective European ministries of defense, that they are diligently trying during this critical period to fully compensate for any potential and unforeseen losses that might arise from America. I think after a little while, America won't even be needed anymore, to be honest. Yes, today it is needed. Yes, until autumn, America is definitely needed. We know one thing for sure. Russia's summer offensive has completely failed. They wanted to blackmail Ukraine by approaching Sumy, Zaporizhia, shelling these cities and using that as leverage to force Ukraine to retreat from some territories, to make concessions. They achieved nothing. You should read and listen to Russian war correspondents. They're screaming, they're tearing their hair out in one place and everywhere because everything they planned has failed. And it will only get better from here. Autumn, I've always said, even a year ago, that the autumn period, specifically September and October of 2025, is when Russia will inevitably have to fully admit that they simply cannot achieve anything substantial at that particular time. This current lull, this period of relative quiet, will undoubtedly continue for a while, but this deceptive silence will not, in fact, last for an extended duration. Ukraine will certainly go on the offensive. How will they organize it? In what way will it be structured? I'm not going to say I'm not a military expert, but I can say with confidence, Russia will be finally convinced. Even Russian war correspondents are already saying, that's it, we won't be able to do anything anymore. While Ukraine, with new technologies, new supplies of missiles, longer-range aircraft, aviation, Ukraine has enough control of the skies. If Ukraine's skies had been closed off with air defense systems, missile defense, and aircraft, Ukraine would have won long ago, and peace would have come to Ukrainian soil. We are waiting for this. And these are not empty expectations. This is quite abundantly clear. The consistently and meticulously constructed line of conduct by the Ukrainian political and military leadership unequivocally shows that they precisely know where to move forward, and they are indeed leading Ukraine and all Ukrainians in the absolutely right and proper direction toward a definitive victory, toward Ukraine's ultimate and complete victory over the Russian aggressor.
Ruslan Kamdic, to wrap up, a few more quotes from Trump's major statements. Trump stated that Putin will not deceive him, and when the talking ends, actions begin. Then the reporter made a statement. If Putin continues to escalate, how far are you willing to go in response? Trump. In what? How far are you willing to go in response if Putin intensifies his missile and drone attacks on Ukraine? Trump. Don't ask me such questions. Ruslan Kamdic, what do you have to say?
He fully understands the gravity of the situation. If Russia truly continues its relentless aggression, persistently doesn't stop, and keeps indiscriminately bombing the sovereign nation of Ukraine, targeting innocent civilians and vital social infrastructure, then in that critical case, Trump will have absolutely no other choice. The whole world, it's impossible to hide this anymore. And he will have to take some more effective measures against Russia. And here is another question. And Russia simply cannot stop. As soon as the ongoing war truly stops, Vladimir Putin's power, his absolute rule, will inevitably be called into serious question, because there, those influential individuals who have been exceptionally close to him for the past 25 long years, let's say specifically the Federal Security Service, FSB, which has undeniably been the very foundation of his enduring rule, today they have surprisingly become his formidable enemies. And it is precisely the war, the Ministry of Defense, the units of the Ministry of Defense, and what they are doing in Ukraine that prevents the FSB from openly calling for and attempting to overthrow Putin. That's why Putin has big problems. How long will he have the strength, power, influence, and resources? He will continue to push forward in Ukraine, but I really hope that the set of measures that America might take in this case will simply leave him without the strength to do so. And then that will be the end for both Putin and Putin's regime. And then they will start sorting things out among themselves. There are plenty of players, the FSB and Putin. Those 1.5 to 2 million people they sent to kill on the front lines, these killers, having gained nothing in Ukraine, will now turn to killing within the government. Yes, they will kill Muslims. Their rage will be directed, their evil will be aimed at the Caucasians. But it's still unclear how all this will end. We are preparing for this very seriously, and we believe that, in the end, this evil emanating throughout the world, radiating murder and violence, the Kremlin, Russia, will eventually collapse. We are doing everything we can to make that happen. And Ukraine is truly at the very forefront of this ongoing war and this significant struggle.
Dear audience, Ruslan Kamdievich and I work for you every week. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Today we discuss Trump's transfer of JASSM missiles to Ukraine, which can strike military targets in Moscow and St. Petersburg, as well as changes in Trump's military rhetoric. He will support Ukraine and provide it with offensive weapons, defensive weapons, and 17 Patriot systems. NATO will purchase weapons for Ukraine from the United States of America, and there will also be 100% tariffs on secondary goods to Russia. That is, countries that buy energy resources from Russia will be subject to 100% tariffs. If Putin does not stop, the Senate may vote for this bill. President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Mukhomedovich, thank you, and as usual, see you next week.
All the best. Take care. See you soon.